Join me as I dive deep into the current situation in the Gaza Strip and explore how it's affecting U.S. relations today. The Gaza Strip, a coastal region in the Middle East, has been a focal point of geopolitical tensions for decades, and its significance in relation to U.S. foreign policy cannot be overstated. With a complex web of historical, cultural, and economic factors at play, the Gaza Strip remains a highly volatile and sensitive region, with the U.S. playing a crucial role in shaping its future. As we explore the ongoing situation in the Gaza Strip, it's essential to understand the intricacies of the region and how they impact U.S. relations. The Gaza Strip faces numerous challenges, including a severe humanitarian crisis, with many residents struggling to access basic necessities like food, water, and healthcare. This crisis has been exacerbated by years of blockade and conflict, which have devastated the region's infrastructure and economy. The political instability in the region is another significant challenge, with various factions and interest groups vying for power and influence. The U.S. has historically played a key role in the region, providing financial and military aid to Israel, while also attempting to negotiate peace agreements between Israeli and Palestinian leaders. However, this role has often been criticized for being biased towards Israel, which has further complicated the situation. The region's economy has been severely impacted by the blockade, which has limited access to essential goods and services. The healthcare system is also under significant strain, with many medical facilities and supplies in short supply. The psychological toll of living in a conflict zone should not be underestimated, with many residents experiencing trauma and anxiety. The U.S. has a moral obligation to help alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people, and its response to the humanitarian crisis will be closely watched by the international community. The role of the U.S. in the region is highly complex and multifaceted, with various interest groups and stakeholders influencing its policy decisions. The U.S. has historically been a strong supporter of Israel, providing significant financial and military aid to the country. However, this support has often been criticized for being unconditional, with some arguing that it has emboldened Israel's more hawkish elements and undermined the peace process. The U.S. has also attempted to negotiate peace agreements between Israeli and Palestinian leaders, but these efforts have been met with limited success. As the U.S. continues to navigate the complex web of alliances and interests in the region, it must balance its support for Israel with its commitment to human rights and international law. The recent developments in the Gaza Strip have been marked by escalating tensions and conflict, with both Israeli and Palestinian forces engaging in violence and retaliation. The U.S. government has responded to these developments with a mix of diplomacy and rhetoric, calling for calm and restraint while also reaffirming its support for Israel's right to self-defense. The international community has been critical of the U.S. response, with many arguing that it has not done enough to address the root causes of the conflict. As the situation continues to unfold, it's essential to consider the perspectives and experiences of all parties involved, including Israeli and Palestinian civilians who are often caught in the crossfire. The conflict in the Gaza Strip has significant implications for the region and the world, with the potential to spark a wider conflict and destabilize the entire Middle East. The U.S. response to the situation will be closely watched, with many looking to the U.S. to provide leadership and guidance. The international community is also playing a critical role, with organizations like the United Nations and the European Union working to provide humanitarian aid and facilitate negotiations. As the situation continues to evolve, it's essential to stay informed and engaged, considering multiple perspectives and sources of information to gain a deeper understanding of the complex issues at play. The U.S. government's response to the situation in the Gaza Strip has been shaped by a range of factors, including domestic politics, strategic interests, and international pressure. The U.S. has a long history of involvement in the region, and its policies have often been influenced by a complex mix of ideological, economic, and geopolitical considerations. As the U.S. navigates the current situation, it must balance its commitment to Israel's security with its obligation to uphold human rights and international law. The US must also consider the potential consequences of its actions, including the impact on regional stability and the prospects for a lasting peace. A critical moment in the Gaza Strip's recent history was the 2014 conflict, which saw a significant escalation of violence and resulted in the deaths of thousands of Palestinians and dozens of Israelis. The US response to the conflict was widely criticized, with many arguing that it had not done enough to prevent the violence or protect civilian lives. The conflict highlighted the deep-seated tensions and divisions that exist between Israelis and Palestinians, and it underscored the need for a lasting and comprehensive peace agreement. As the US reflects on its role in the region, it must consider the lessons of the past and work towards a more just and equitable future. The Gaza Strip situation is also closely tied to the broader regional dynamics, with countries like Egypt, Jordan, and Iran playing important roles in shaping the conflict. The US must consider these regional factors as it navigates the situation, working to build alliances and coalitions that can help to promote stability and peace. The US must also be mindful of the potential for external actors to exploit the situation, using it to further their own interests and agendas. As the US works to address the complex challenges in the Gaza Strip, it must adopt a nuanced and multifaceted approach, taking into account the diverse perspectives and interests of all parties involved. The US's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital was a highly significant moment in the region's recent history, with far-reaching implications for the peace process and the status of the Gaza Strip. The move was widely criticized by the international community, with many arguing that it undermined the prospects for a two-state solution and exacerbated tensions in the region. The US must consider the consequences of its actions, weighing the potential benefits against the potential risks and drawbacks. As the US navigates the complex and often contentious landscape of the Middle East, it must prioritize diplomacy, dialogue, and cooperation, working to build bridges and foster greater understanding between nations and peoples. In another critical development, the Gaza Strip has seen a significant increase in protests and demonstrations in recent years, with many Palestinians demanding an end to the blockade and greater freedom and autonomy. The US has responded to these protests with a mix of concern and criticism, calling for calm and restraint while also affirming the right of Palestinians to peaceful protest. The international community has been watching the situation closely, with many organizations and governments calling for an end to the blockade and greater support for the Palestinian people. As the situation continues to unfold, it's essential to consider the perspectives and experiences of all parties involved, including Palestinian civilians, who are often at the forefront of the protests and demonstrations. The situation in the Gaza Strip is complex and multifaceted, with a range of factors contributing to the ongoing tensions and conflict. The US has a significant role to play in addressing the challenges facing the region, from the humanitarian crisis to the political instability. As we recap the main points discussed, it's clear that the situation in the Gaza Strip is a deeply human issue, with real people and families affected by the violence, poverty, and uncertainty. The US must prioritize a comprehensive and nuanced approach, taking into account the diverse perspectives and interests of all parties involved, and working towards a lasting and just peace. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the current situation in the Gaza Strip and US relations. Please leave your comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. If you're interested in learning more about the Middle East and US foreign policy, be sure to check out my other videos, where I explore a range of topics and issues in depth.